Some more people coming in here. All right, I'll get started with the introductions, and we'll let people come in. If you come in, please do put on your video. I just think it's nicer to talk to people who you can see than instead of black screen names. So please do turn on your video. Okay, but keep your audio muted except for Mike. So I can mute a couple of people here. So I think, Mike, did we meet? You were one of my students.
How soon they forget.
Well, I was wondering because I don't think of you as a student anymore. I mean, because I guess that's how we met. You were in one of my classes, and you did very well and graduated and became an advisor for CW Academy. And he's gone on from even that, and he's does a lot of POTA with he belongs to a couple different clubs. Lives in some crazy like northern Idaho or some insane place where it's probably still winter, and he'll correct me on all this, and I can see how he wants to. In a case, I badgered him because he's a good friend if he would do an N1MM plus tutorial because he's done one in the past for me. It was excellent. And he um, has helped. I send students to him and he helps them. And he's done that over the years for me. And we've known each other for several years now. In any case, I asked him to do this and he agreed. Then he wanted to back out saying he wasn't using N1MM plus because he's out writing down because he's doing sodas and podas and doesn't have a big computer with him. But being the great guy that he is, he said he would go take a look at it and offer up. So this is really a basic introduction to N1MM plus. If you use it all the time and you've got it set up, this probably isn't for you. But if you want to try it, set it up, get some of the advantages out of it, it's a fantastic program. I think Mike is going to use a 7300, ICOM 7300 probably as his example. And so if you have one of those, you're in for a treat. Anyways, I'm going to let Mike finish by introducing himself. One thing Mike and I have in common is we caught the same cold several states away from each other. So it's gone into my chest and obviously into his head. So he will do the best he can. I just want to thank him so much for stepping up to the plate when I know how he feels. I hardly know who I am, but he's going to give it a good whack. So, with that introduction, if you want to call it, I will turn it over to you, Mike, N7IDs. Last name Brown, by the way.
Okay, am I going to be able to share my screen at some point?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Well, I just want, just full disclosure, the thing that really sweetened the pot was when Buzz offered me the new KH1. So I'm waiting for that, and I really appreciate that, Buzz. Thanks for that. But anyway, so this is like, as Buzz said, this is a basic N1MM kind of introduction demo. I'm not a computer guy. N1MM can be kind of intimidating when you look at it. And I figured it out. So I figure if I figured it out, anybody can. A couple things about N1MM. It is a Windows program, and it's a Windows only program. So if you want to use an Apple or a Linux, you're kind of out of luck with this. So I guess what is N1MM is, the first question. And N1MM is a contest logger. And it's probably the leading contest logger that, you're going to find serious contesters using. And as we go into the demo, I think you'll kind of see why, because it's got some really interesting features that are really geared toward contesters. However, I think it has applications for a lot of other people because it has so many different functions. So, why would you use N1MM? You can use it as a general logger. I mean, they kind of, and the people that write the program kind of discourage that. Because it's not full featured, but you can definitely keep a log with it. I use it as a DX logger when I was chasing DX Entry Club. That's how I kept track of those. And like I said, as we go into this, you'll kind of see how some of the functions that make things like that convenient. So I'm going to share my screen at this point. Let's see, which one? I guess that one. Let's see if that works. Share. All right. Y'all can see my screen? Okay, there we go. All right. So this is kind of the screen that I use for N1MM. You'll notice that there's a bunch of different panels on here. When you first load the thing, there's like a VFO and I think this band map and a log, and that's it. And you can add. I'll show you how to add these other things later, but I'll go through them one at a time. So this is the main VFO. 7300 has two VFOs, so if you want to flop back and forth bands or something, you could have a second VFO over here, running that. But for simplicity's sake, let's just concentrate on VFO A here. And, the main kind of heart of this is this entry window. And so in this entry window, if you're in a contest or, you're just logging, you would put a call sign in here, your report, and your name. I mean, I have this set up right now as a DX logger. So, there would be, 599, and then, whatever, if the person gives me their name. For every contest, the exchange is gonna differ, and so the setup will differ based on the contest. And I'll show you that in a second. Now, contesters love this because of a feature, uh, which is called Enter Sends Message. And I have that clicked on here. And what Enter Sends Message does is you can see that F4 is highlighted. And basically, if I hit enter, and then when he comes back, it'll flip over to F2, which is 599TU. So, basically, serious contesters, they're just hitting enter over and over again, and it's just going back and forth between those two buttons. There are these buttons here. These are kind of ones that I've worked out for the various logs. But if you right click on this, you can edit what these buttons send. So I've got like F6, for instance. Here it says N7ID, but what that sends is N7ID, and I put some space in between it. So if somebody doesn't get my call the first time, I can send it N7ID. Now notice there's two sets of these buttons. That's because there's two kind of modes to this. There's a run mode, and has a separate set of buttons, and there's search and pounce mode. Most of the time, you guys, if you're running a CWT or something like that, I assume you're probably not running. You're doing search and pounce. So I'll kind of focus on my setup for that. You can also designate a set of these F keys for each contest. So if you want, for a specific contest, if you want to have certain F keys, if you think that would be, useful to have, F10 be dit or whatever, then, you can do that, and you can save that in your database. Okay, so how do we set up a contest? So if you go to File and you go New Login Database, it will give you this with a drop down. So let's say I want to set this up for the CWT, the next CWT. So we're going to go to CW ops, and then there's the date of the next CWT. Um, for our purposes, I'm going to be assisted. It doesn't matter in the CWT, obviously. The exchange with, when you set the program up initially, you're going to put your name in, you're going to put your ARRL section, you're going to put your, CQ region, all that stuff. So it'll usually, say something like name an exchange, and it'll know what the exchange is for the contest. So in this case, I have my CW ops number in here, so I don't have to enter it. It'll just, when it sends the exchange, it'll send my name, Mike, and then 2310. And then there are associated files. Like I said, you can change the CW function keys. The big one here is the call history file. So this is a file that some guy in Canada compiles that has all the call signs of anybody that's participated in a CWT in the past. And that has some really interesting functions because you can check, if you get a call sign, the guy's, sending it, 40 words a minute, and you get a partial, you can check to see if it's actually a call sign, your guess. So let's say I'm going to update that, and boom, it's updated. Okay. And now we are in CWT for Wednesday. So and it tells me that, oh, yes, call history is on. Thank you. Okay, so this check log, since we were talking about that, let me show you how that works. So let's say some crazy guy AC6, but I can't get he keys badly and I can't get the end of his call sign. Well, there's all the world of possibilities it could be. If the next go round I get A, okay, now it starts to look like AC6AC, this guy here. And when I click on that, it tells me, yes, that's an actual call sign. When I hit tab, okay, it doesn't have his name in here, but if his name was in the database, actually you can see his name's in the database here, and I don't know why that didn't populate. It should have populated, but something weird about N1MM. But in any event, supposed to populate, should say buzz in there. So let me go to N7, and then okay, and then I log it. But I have to enter that, Buzz, and then he is 1911, and okay, and there he is. Let me make sure. Let me turn my power down so I'm not sending that over the air. And there he is over here. I've logged that contact. So basically, that's how that data entry and the check log kind of work. Now, I also, you'll see this window of Telnet. Now, this is a kind of a really cool feature. So I have this hooked up to it's connected to a DX cluster in my part of the world. I'm using VE7CC. I'm not going to get into DX clusters because that's way beyond the scope of this. But if you use a DX cluster, what you can do is you can link this to that, and then you'll notice you see these call signs on this spectrum display. And so if you click on that call sign, it'll QSY to that person's frequency. You can also do it over here in this kind of band map thing. Or you can do it graphically, like if you actually see on the waterfall, like this guy's actually on, you can click on that. And then when you hit enter, it'll populate this guy's stuff if it's in the database. And so you can see why contesters love this thing, because it's just like eating peanuts. They can just, click, hit enter, log it, click, hit enter, and go on to the next one. So let's see. this is the spectrum display here. As I mentioned, I mean, this is on a 7300. Your mileage may vary depending on what radio you're using, obviously, but the 7300 has a feature that you can connect it to this with one cable. This is a USB cable, and it'll output this onto your screen. So this is why I initially started using N1MM a lot, because I really loved having, not having to look back at the radio, the little screen. I could see it, big on here. And, you can kind of set the noise floor where you want it. Uh, let's see. So the next thing is, okay, let's say I got something wrong on Buzz's, thing. Wanted to, uh, I wanted to edit that. I can edit the contact, and I can change the frequency or the time or whatever, whatever's necessary. So, you're not locked in forever and ever into that log. Let's see. The other thing is you can display the points at any time. Let's see. Windows score summary, and so you can look and see what the points you have in the contest. There's also a little thing down here that'll tell you how many contacts you have and how many multipliers. But you can just have a running total up here as well. Okay. So, that's basically the functions of N1MM in a nutshell. And I'm going to go on to installing it. So I am going to let's see, go there. Okay. So to install N1MM, you're going to download the program. And they have this kind of weird way of doing it. There's a full install, and then once you install it, but before you start it up, you have to update it. And I don't know why that is, but so you do a full install, it's typical Windows install, and then you'll update it. It'll also nag you to update the program pretty frequently when you turn it on. They update it, pretty regularly. There's really comprehensive documentation on their website. It's maybe a little too comprehensive because when you're looking for a particular thing, sometimes it's hard to dig through everything. There's also a Groups IO that's pretty good. There's resources out there where you can reach out to people. Like I said, contesters, a lot of contesters are using this, so there's a lot of people that know way more than I do about setting this up. Okay, now as far as getting it to work with your radio, because the really magic thing here is, of course, getting that spectrum display and getting it to key the radio. That's kind of the trick, and it's not difficult. And they do give you, there's a list of supported radios on the website, and they give you pretty comprehensive instructions on how exactly to set these things up. The key thing, and I'm using the 7300 as an example, because that's the radio I have. The key thing is you got to get the drivers right. You got to get the settings consistent between the radio and the program. And I'll go back to the program and show you that in a second. So, one thing you need to do is check your drivers. And if you don't have the proper driver installed already on your machine, then you can download it from your radio manufacturer's support site. In my case, ICOM has a driver. It's called a Silicon Labs bridge, and you'll look for that in your device manager, and you'll see one of your ports, one of your serial ports will have that designation, and that's what you're going to enter into the program. So let me go back to this. So to configure your ports, etc., to get all this stuff and you can see in my case, I discovered that that driver was located on COM4. You can pick your radio. You want this to send CW, and then you're going to hit this set. And let me move that over there. This is important. If you want the spectrum display to work, you need to set that speed to 115.2, and you need to do the same thing in the radio. There's a radio. There's radio settings for that USB connection, and then it'll give you this stuff. The DTR and RTS, it doesn't matter with the 7300 which order you do these in. One of them's push to talk to put it into transmit, and one of them actually sends a CW. Doesn't matter which one of these you assign to which one, but you just have to make sure you do the same thing in the radio. I think everything else is pretty straightforward here. It kind of gives you some hints on, right here on the ICOM settings, because I designated that it was a 7300. So that, and also I'm doing single operator 2 VFOs, because I've got 2 VFOs. I don't use 2 VFOs, so I could do this. This is something different, and this is what serious contesters are doing. SO2R, they call it. Just so you know, that's if you have a K4 or something like that that has 2 separate receivers, they're actually listening on both, and they're logging contacts on both, and they're just flipping back and forth. That's how they get their throughput up. I mean, if you're a serious contester, I mean, my advanced instructor was a contester, and he said, a good throughput is like 250 an hour, I think he said. So you're cranking through these, pretty darn fast, and they can basically they can double their throughput by running 2 bands at the same time. So, and that's that. Okay, let me just, and so when you first install this, it's like I said, it's going to give you some basic stuff. You're going to have 1 VFO, I think a band map, and a log. So in this window thing, you can add, like say the telnet display, you can add it. You can put the check log, this thing in there. Buzz doesn't want me to tell you this, but there's also, you can connect it to a CW decoder. Of course, you'd never want to do that. You can also, let's see, you can do this, you can look at the score summary from here. There's all kinds of ways you can customize this. I mean, you can move these windows around, whatever you want. Let's see, the important stuff. I think we've covered. If you need to open a log, you want to look at an old log. There's a function to open the log in the database, and that gives you this window, and that shows you all your old logs. So you can go back and open it up and, take a look at it, manipulate it, edit it, whatever you need to do. Or if like say you wanted to submit it and you put high and it should have been low for points, then you can change that. Now, as far as submitting logs, this thing allows you to generate a Cabrillo file, which is that text file that you'd send in. It allows you to import ADIFs. And I have found this useful, like at field day where people are using different logging programs, you can import these ADIFs and then you can create one that you can export. And so you can take whatever format you can import and then you can export it as an ADIF, etc. And I believe somewhere in here, there's a function to send it to, you can send it to Logbook of the World if that ever comes back to life. But in any event, that is, that's kind of the basic stuff about N1MM. So I will open it up for questions that I might be able to answer. Like I said, I'm not an expert. I'm just a guy that's not a techie that kind of figured some stuff out about it. Any questions?
Dave, why don't you go ahead? Dave from Illinois.
Well, let me turn my screen share off so I can actually see what's happening. Stop. Okay, there we go.
All right. Can you hear me, Mike?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. Hey, I just had a quick question there regarding, I use N3FJP for my general logger and all my contests. If I start using N1MM as a contest logger, which I want to do, I'm assuming then after a contest, I can do the import export ADIF and I can get all of those contacts from N1MM into N3FJP.
You can definitely, yeah, you can definitely do the import export with certain loggers. There's also a bridge program. It's a separate piece of software that you can install that will, as you log in one of them, it'll
Ah,
it'll 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 talk to the other one. Now, I never used N3FJP because I thought, oh wow, this is great, and I contacted N3FJP, the guy, and I'm like, okay, how do I do this? And he's like, oh, we don't have that functionality. Now, I don't know if they've added that. That was a while back. I don't know if they've added that, but I know what is that DX suite or whatever it's called. I know that has the functionality. There are loggers out there that have that functionality where they'll talk to each other. So it'll just live, transfer them. But yeah,
okay.
otherwise you can do that.
All right, good. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, Bob.
I'm using this card inside that I installed inside my 7300 to connect to SDR Play. And I'm connecting that and the IC300 and the 7300 to my computer, even with WSJTX and FT8. Will adding this conflict with that?
I have no idea.
I think Bob, you're looking at sort of multiple. You're asking to have multiple connections. The 7300 supports one, so you have to spoof it. You have to get a little program that handles multiple USB addresses to a machine. It can be tricky and problematic, but it theoretically can be done. Maybe there's another computer expert here they want. I don't think we want to spend an hour on it, but that's my understanding. Like a K4 has two USB connections on it out to machines it'll deal with. 7300 has one, but you can do virtual connections in your computer, so that's how you would handle it, with virtual USB connections. Back to you, Mike.
Yeah, no, I like I said, I mean, I know the simplest kind of stuff about this. So there's a lot of stuff I don't know, but Buzz does. So
Well, this was like when you tried to help Paul.
yeah, so Paul KXTR, most of you probably know him. When he got his K4, he wanted to get N1MM running, but he had all this stuff stacked on top of it. And he was trying to get everything running at the same time. And I was like, well, I can show you how to get N1MM running. And we did. But, trying to, get multiple programs going was a lot more complicated. Anybody else?
So
what is the name of that bridge logger?
That I do not remember at this point, to tell you the truth. I haven't installed it in a while because I just like it, like Buzz told you, I've been a SOTA operator pretty much exclusively for the last couple of years, so I'm logging on paper now. and I just submit things on the websites. So I don't remember. It was, yeah, I don't remember, but if you Google it, it'll come up if it's still supported. I don't know. It was just some guy's third party's project.
But again, doing something like that is getting fancy. Um, anytime you get fancy with these things, you're going to spend a lot of time fiddling with it usually to get it, and you might need some support. Um, but how many here are like true beginners with N1MM plus? Okay, so you download it, you update it, it's installed, and then you have to go through that configure process of trying to get it to talk. And you're talking about USB. Some people might still be using serial ports, etc. But you try and hook it up. Obviously, it will work without being hooked up to your radio, but it won't interface. It doesn't know what frequency you're on. It can't capture a waterfall. It doesn't transmit um, from your radio, but you could use it that way. The trick, as Mike said, is getting that to work. USB is by far the easiest, but people do it all the time on serial ports. I've done it on serial ports. Um, it can work. And then you got to create a database, right, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, it create when you install it, it'll create a database. You can create multiple databases, like if you have, if you're doing operations, if you go on DXpeditions like Buzz does all over the world, you could create multiple databases to keep your logs, separate. But I have one database. It's the one that N1M created, and I just create new entries in that. New contests is what they call them.
So the trick to this is N1MM Plus for you has templates for every contest virtually. And you want to go in and find your contest and click on it and select it. That's where people get hung up. Newbies get hung up is they turn it on and they're like, do something. You have to go in and do that config. Is it? Where is
Yeah,
that?
you want me to show that again? Or
Yeah, yeah.
would that
Show
be
'em.
helpful? All right, let me go back and share again. Wink, wink. Okay. So, when you configure this, so first off, when you first, install the program, it's going to nag you to set your station information. And so here I've set my station information, and then when you configure a contest, the exchange will pull from this. So whatever, if the contest requires a grid square or a CQ zone or whatever, it'll pull from these entries. So the more information you have in here, obviously, the better the program can read stuff and populate it into your exchange. So when you want to configure a new contest, you open log in database.
Can you share your screen again?
Oh, it isn't shared?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was. Well, I'm selfish. I'm not sharing. Why? Let's see. Only. All right. Let me go back. Share screen. Share. All right. Now it's shared again, right?
Yes.
All right. So what I was saying is when you first start, install N1MM, you're gonna enter all this station data, and and that's what the program's going to pull from for the exchange for the different contests, and that's this screen here. And then when you want to configure a log of a contest, you go new log, and then there's this drop down that has zillions and zillions of contests. Now, if you have a weird contest that isn't in this list, there is a way that you can configure a custom contest that's documented on the website how you do that. So I won't go into that, but you can see, there's zillions of these things. And like the one I was using was the next CWT. And so, that gives you, it gives you all these options, it gives you all these options that you can add in. But once you do that and hit OK, it'll customize this to be, set up for, all the, like the F buttons and, the, the band map and everything will be customized for that contest. So if this was a contest, for instance, where it was just foreign stations, you wouldn't see any Ks, or if it was a worldwide contest or something like that where you don't get points for American stations, you wouldn't see Ks or Ws on here. It would only be stations that you could possibly get you could possibly get points for. Does that make sense?
Yes,
All
that's
right.
very, very, very good. So you want to go in. I will mention one little addition thing that you had mentioned earlier. Um, uh, N1MM plus updates every Tuesday, and it's important because when you go into a contest, you really need to have the program um, updated to do that contest at that date. So, if I'm going, if I'm going into the weekend, I'll update N1MM plus on a Thursday. If I'm going to be in a, a contest, it's like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or something. So even if it doesn't offer you an update, which it should, you want to go in. Maybe you can find where the update thing is, Mike, and show them.
Yeah. Let's see what that is.
The way we get around
Yeah,
this is
it always nags me, so I never do it manually. Um,
maybe in the help. I don't know.
yeah, maybe it's in help.
Um,
Oh, you can report score to 3830. They hide that if
yeah,
you.
stuff is in weird places. I mean, this is a program where you just have to stagger around it and work your way into it and get used to it. Like to find the help that the update thing. It's in there. I just
Yeah.
I still go stagger around until I find it. Jerry, go ahead.
This might sound rather peculiar or stupid question, but what I've seemed to hear from Mike is that when you do a contest and you hear a station, you use the buttons to do the rest of the work. This has caused me a bit of confusion when I've been using N1MM. I've managed to find eventually the call sign, put it into the box. Then I've then got myself completely lost trying to put the name in and what the exchange is without using all these function buttons. And it not often gets itself in a tiz.
I'm going to help you, Jerry, with that. I'm going to help Mike help you because yeah. So let's just address that. I'm going to ask Mike some questions here. So all those little buttons you see, like the F4 one is highlighted. Those are the F buttons on the top of your keyboard. And so when you click on that F4 that says N7ID, it's essentially the same as pressing the F4 button on the top of your keyboard. They are the same thing. This is just virtually. Now, the trick is in what they do. So the program, in its wisdom, has pre-programmed these as it sees fit for that contest. I have found that almost always I have to change them. Now, maybe I'm the only messed up person in the world, but can you show how to change them?
Yeah. I went through this pretty quickly earlier. So if you right click on your with your mouse, the first ones are the run buttons, which are different because they're based on your calling CQ. And then whatever color that is, the second grouping is the search and pounce messages. So if I wanted to change, like say F8, if I wanted to change that to send buzz and read buzz, the first line is what it reads, and the second line, what the button reads, and then what it sends. Then I would do that, and as you can see, F8 now says that. So it's really easy to change these. You can also save them. You can assign a name to them and save them. If you like this configuration, think you might use it in another contest, or you can just keep using the default one and customize it how like this.
So,
So
Mike, when you see stuff like in brackets, what does it mean in the commas?
oh, it's got its own syntax as far as so I believe this is going to send the exchange, whatever is in the exchange field,
Can
it'll
you can you
send.
can you go show us how you find the exchange field to see what's in
Well,
it?
so that would be if you go to, well, let's see, I'll just have to do that. So
How did you get there?
I go to file, new log, basically, like I'm going to set up a new log, and it'll let basically I'm editing, this
Okay.
contest. It just opens the current one. But it's gonna send the exchange, and that's designated per contest. And so this is going to pull from, like I said, that data entry thing. So, in the CWT, that data entry screen. So in the CWT, name is the name field in that, and exchange, let's see. So station data, if you can see that. So name is going to take my first name from this field, and then exchange in this case is going to take my CWT number, which it's somewhere in here. Or I guess I've entered it somewhere else. They hide stuff all over the place.
Yeah.
But
So this kind of brings me to my point that the stuff in the brackets often doesn't do what you want, and so you might end up deleting the stuff from the bracket or commenting it out. What I usually do is just comment it out, and then you can do what you want.
yeah, I mean you can force it like here, like in this situation, I can force it to send Mike, right? Or I can say, I could say name in brackets, and it would pull from the data entry field. There's also, like I said, like I have in one of these, this N7 ID, where I have it spaced out, and I'm using a different set of messages, but I could have, my call sign spaced out, and I can put space in there, so it wouldn't send an N7 ID, it would be N7 ID. It has its own syntax, which is documented.
So what I do just to give an alternative is I'm a 2 button person. So in CWT, you're gonna have your call. Let's say I'm a searcher and a pouncer. Let's assume most of you are. So I'm gonna have AC6AC on a button, and then I'm gonna have another button that says Buzz 1911, or you might have your name in CWA. So that's
Yeah,
so 2
and
buttons. I programmed 2 buttons
and
and
that
and I'm done.
and that works for a contest like the exchange is always the same, but if you get into one of these contests where the exchange varies, or you've got to send back, a serial or something like that, that's where the stuff in the curly brackets comes into play, because it's pulling that from somewhere else. So it gets more, depending on the contest, it can be more complicated. CWT is the simplest case because, like I said, the exchange is always the same. It's always your name and your CW ops number.
So I recommend that you turn your power off and you practice. You try the buttons and listen to what is it sending, because it may not be sending what you want. And then you're going to have to open up the button and get in and play with it. So remember, there's the search and pounce and the run first, and then the search and pounce. So it's done twice for two different purposes. And you want to go in and get it so that, it's like the serial number is incrementing, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, the default function keys, like I've messed with this over time to get them the way I like it. The ones that, the default function keys that come with it, may not serve, your purposes. So, don't be afraid to mess with them. And, if you do mess with them, like I said, you right click and you can change them back. It's pretty easy. So you're not going to break anything.
Do you read? I've forgotten, but how do you comment out something so that everything after is a comment?
I have no idea. I don't do that. You do that.
Jerry, do you know how to do that? You have your hand up.
Negative. The question I was looking at is I'm trying to do it the old-fashioned way by using a key rather than a function key.
Well, okay, and that
Mike, where I'm falling over is I would put the call sign in once I've managed to decipher it. Yep, and then I hit the space bar, and it sort of populates it. And then what happens next? Because then it starts going crazy on me.
Well, okay, so a couple things. When you're setting the contest up, you can just not enter anything into the send exchange. So it doesn't try to send anything for you. And you can just manually do that and then hit enter. And I believe that'll just send whatever's in the boxes, right? I mean, the other thing, and like I said, the big time contesters, they love this feature of, and this is in configure, they love this enter sends message mode. And, basically they don't mess with the function keys. They're just hitting, they're just putting the call sign in or, clicking on this thing, hitting enter, sends their call sign. They hit enter again and it enters the exchange. They hit enter again and it logs it and goes back to their call sign. So they're just hitting, enter serially. So I guess that's kind of, there's kind of two ways to approach that if you don't want to use the function keys. But everything around this thing is based on using the function keys, because, if you get a contest keyer, it's got buttons on it, so that's what these contesters are used to, hitting these buttons back and forth, sending their call sign, sending the exchange, automating it so they can crank through. And that's what this thing's really geared toward. The whole program is throughput of QSOs. Does that help at all?
Once you get it working, the program is simply amazing what it does for you, how much it helps you. I mean, it's like having your advisor sitting right next to you, helping you in a contest.
Yeah, I understand that, both and Mike. Yeah, I understand that now. I'm sorry to put in and ask the silly question, but that's what really got me confused, because I wasn't going to do that. My aim in life is to try and send my exchange manually, and often I get myself into a right flap doing it and screw up, and I get question marks. But then I eventually gave up on M1MM just simply because I was making such an absolute mess of it all.
You can send with a key and still use N1MM plus. You just, instead of hitting the function button to send, you just use your key.
Well, hit tab. Hit tab. Don't hit the space bar. Hit tab, and you are. Let's see, right? And then when I okay, but you have to turn off. I'm sorry, you have to turn off enter sense message if you do that. But let me. So I'm just do this manually, right? Oh, and it warns you if it's a dupe. So I'm just hitting tab. Don't hit space. Hit tab, and then do that, and then it logs it, and that's it. So it's tab, tab, enter, and just make sure that when you have it configured, this enter sends message is off in that case. You do not want to have that on, or when you hit enter, it's going to start sending stuff. I think that might be what's causing you consternation with what you're trying to do. But that's the simple way.
You've hit it right on the head.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Hopefully it won't. Hopefully it won't sue me for hitting it on the head. But
they're a long way away from the rainy UK.
Yeah.
You have more questions, Mike. Bill?
Yeah.
You want to go ahead, Bill?
Yeah, I have a quick comment and a question to address Bob's question about the RSP play. I have a similar setup, and you can make it work. There's various programs that allow you to share a COM port, but you just have to play with it. It's not necessarily easy, but you can make it work. My question to Mike is, at the end of a contest, do I need to save anything to save my log, or does it automatically save it in the database?
It'll save it in the database. I mean, once it's in here, it's saved, and then you can do whatever you want with it.
Okay, thank you.
And and important point, to close the program, because you're probably wondering, how do I close all these bloody windows? The main VFO X closes all the windows.
So good advice. When the contest starts is not the time to open up N1MM plus and start thinking you're going to use it. A month before is a good time to start getting N1MM plus set up and practice with it. Okay? Not field day. Speaking of field day, Mike, could you bring up field day and maybe just show?
Okay.
I think
so
to set
up field day, new log. And then, like I said, we'd pull this down in, what do they call it? ARRL field day, right? No, I think they call it field day. I'm not allowed to use this at my club because they want everything to be on a Raspberry Pi. Okay, so I'm not that familiar with field day.
I hear this complaint from Mike like all year until field day. Like the day after field day, he'll start complaining.
I want my F keys. I want my F keys, and they won't give them to me. Okay, so here's field day. You know, you'd set your power. You'd set your mode, overlay of, I don't know if that really matters. Assisted, how many transmitters that you're doing. So, you know, your send exchange here, like say you'd go 2A, Idaho, if we're running 2, and then your operators, and this is assuming, okay, now this is assuming that I'm operating under my call sign. If I was operating under the club call sign, that's where I'd create a new database, right? And I'd populate that database with the calls, you know, I'd set it up with the call sign of the club so that when it, you know, the buttons would read the right way and so forth. and then when the log is submitted, it would go in the right place. Also, associated files. There's usually right now there's no call history file name, but usually there's a call history file name. I will advise you. I've tried to do this. That when they put up out a call history file for a contest like Field Day, you got to remember that it's historical. And so usually the sections don't change. Usually if a station is operating in Field Day in the past, it's in the same section, but the number of transmitters and what category they're in does change. And so, you got to be a little bit skeptical and kind of, you got to listen. You can't just like hit the keys, which is the temptation with this thing. But you actually have to copy, but that's basically how you'd set up for Field Day.
So if you're going to Field Day, to a club, there's probably a network engineer volunteer there who has networked a bunch of these, set it up with the right everything, and you're just going to go and operate. In which case, you're in pretty good shape. You can always turn off the power and try the couple keys and see what you're getting, or you can ask and like that. But hopefully it's all set up for you, and all you need to be aware of is that you're going to type into the space for the call sign, and you're going to type in the information required for Field Day, and it should work a treat for you. You'll probably find that most Field Days will use this software. I would probably say a slight majority, probably a bunch that don't, but you're gonna run into this. How many people here think they're gonna do club Field Day? Yeah, so you this is good to see this now, and you might want to play with this at home before Field Day if you have the time. All right, back to you, Mike, and questions.
Okay. I can, yeah.
Chris
Because I'm
from
sharing,
Newcastle.
I can only see a limited.
Sure, Chris from Newcastle.
Another Geordie.
Except I'm not a Geordie, as Jerry will tell you. Yeah, the one thing, because I use N1MM whenever I do a contest, but this telnet thing was completely new to me. I've never used the telnet. Is this something that I can probably safely ignore, or would it be helpful, and is it difficult to set up and use? I've just never used it.
You can absolutely ignore it. It's it's just I mean what the telnet in this case does for you, the kind of the magical thing is it populates the spectrum display with call signs of stations that are heard by that node. It gets, there's nodes all over the world. They have different connections. And there's ways to customize them so that you're only, filter them rather, so that you're like mine, this is VE7CC, which you can tell it's in Vancouver, Canada, which is the closest, node to me. But also they have pretty good filtering where I can say, okay, I don't want to see spots that some cluster heard in Namibia or in Europe. I only want stations that are in the west coast northwest of the United States and Canada, and the DX that they heard. So you can filter it all different ways. I'm sure there's there's DX clusters near you. You can customize it like that if you want to use this click to tune feature. That's about the only big feature. I started using it mainly when I was like I said, chasing DX. Because you'd see the DX on there and you could see, you could click on it and it's like, okay, that's, maybe I can hear it. That's where they're supposed to be.
But how many
Okay,
of you would like to have the program tell you the frequency and the call sign I mean, isn't that kind of awesome? You know, to be able to have that there. I mean, that's a pretty nice backstop.
I mean, if you're doing if you're doing a CWT, like this spectrum display, from 025 to 045, I mean, it'll be wall to wall signals, here, like, like on 20, in the evening. So you can just basically, click, 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 and go from, one to the next. Like I said, it's like eating peanuts
Can
if
you
you want to
show
do that. You
can you
don't
show
have to.
them can you show them how to actually connect to a telnet? Let's be clear, what is a telnet or a quote DX cluster? Can you tell
I,
them what that is?
a DX, well, maybe. I sort of understand. Basically, like VE7CC runs a server in Vancouver, and what they do is there are, servers all over the world that report, people post spots. You know, uh, you know, I'm familiar with, I don't know if you're familiar with Soda and Poda, but, people post their own spots and say, hey, this is the frequency I'm operating on. And then people, know to go there to look for you. So basically, this is kind of the flip side of that, where a DX station will be on and somebody will upload that to this node, to this server. And then the server will broadcast that out. Used to be over 2 meter or something, or packet, now it's on the internet. So basically what happens is, let me just, I connect to this cluster, and you can set it up. I mean, this is way beyond the scope of this class, but there's millions, or not millions, but hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clusters all over the place. You can connect to a cluster, you can filter it the way you want it, and then
Where do you get that list of clusters? Do you have to
under clusters.
now you have to import that list, or is it in there?
No, it's in there.
Okay.
And, but I mean, there's, like these are all over the world. You obviously, you'd want a cluster close to you, and you want to, VE7CC is really good because they have external filtering. I don't have to I've never used this filtering because you can go to their site. They have a web page that you can go and install your filtering. So, like I said, I just want to hear spots that are posted by stations in 7, basically, and specifically, in the north, the northwest. So to connect with it, I just say, hey, let's reconnect, and now it's connected with the server, and I log in, and it starts downloading spots as people post them. And then eventually it'll populate live these things, and they have some persistence. There's also, depending on the contest, the color code means something. It's less than useful to me because I'm colorblind, so I can sort of tell some are fainter than the other, but I've never really messed with the color code too much. But basically, they're telling you, yeah, this is for this contest, this would be a good contact or not, or it's a dupe. It'll notify you if it's a dupe, so you can just pass that one by. I mean, like I said, this is really useful for DX, or if you're in a contest like a CWT, or one of these big contests where it's just wall-to-wall signals, and you want to kind of pick out the ones that you want to try to contact, and just you click and tune. It just automates it.
Okay.
It's
Well,
not necessary.
we are over our time.
All right.
I'm wondering if any final questions for Mike? Bob, go ahead. Bob Neff.
Yeah. Hi, Mike. I just want to say hi. You were my intermediate advisor, and here I am still. So, but
There
my
you are.
question is, do you have a contact email or phone number, or do you want to be
And
bothered
so,
by?
no, I like I said, if it's a 7300, I can help you. If it's not, I can try to help you. You know,
Well, yeah,
uh,
I do have a 7300, but anyway,
yeah,
without wasting.
N7 ID at Outlook.
Oh, at outlook.com.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yep.
And thank you for the presentation.
Yep.
All right, other questions?
Yeah, Buzz is Barry. I thought this started at 2000.
Yeah, there was different announcements,
Okay.
but we made 1900 as the announcement several times to
Well,
correct that.
I looked on your group IO and this morning to
Well,
see. Sorry, I came in late.
It's
But-
recorded. It's recorded, Barry. It'll be put up on
Okay,
YouTube.
but I got one question. How do you bring up the top window, where you saw all the call signs on? I just brought up the telnet thing.
Okay. Let me go back. And hey, Barry, by the way, long time
Yes.
no see.
I know.
So the Spectrum display, if you go to Window, this is
Okay.
all the available windows, and Spectrum display is that one, and that'll toggle that on and off.
Okay. Got it. Whoa. It took my whole screen up.
Yeah, and you can resize it and do whatever you want with it.
Right.
All right, good question. Other questions? Shar?
I think I'm getting a good idea how to use the program, and I've got it downloaded, but it's not connecting to my computer or to the radio. Is that, do I just need to, is it the drivers or
Well,
where do I?
maybe, like I said, if you go to, if you go to they have a page on their support,
Okay.
right? Let's see, where is it? Docs supported, docs supported radios, which is this page. You can look for your radio, and it'll give you the settings you need to put in.
Okay.
And then like I said, like I know on the 7300, you basically have to mirror the settings in the radio, in the menus of the radio. But whatever your particular radio is, that's where you find the settings. And if it's, they have a list of radios that are not supported, that it just ain't going to work. So
What radio do you have, Shar?
I got a 7610.
okay,
Yeah, very much the same as the 7300.
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So do your best and then maybe drop Mike an email.
Yeah, and there and there's a 7610, so your settings would be different than the 7300, but it's kind of the same.
Okay.
Feature. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Other people? All right. Jeff, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. Mike, thanks very much for a wonderful presentation. I am wondering if you have any understanding or comments on Windows scheduler priority and problems with transmission with the enter sends. I never use the enter sends. I've used a program mostly just for logging. And whether some of the keyers like WinKeyer you can hook up with real-time drivers really make a difference, or are they unnecessary?
Well, enter send, like I said, that's something that the serious contesters love. I just use the function keys personally, because I'm not a high throughput, kind of operator. And let's see, I'm sorry, what was the?
Well, I read that if you don't use a special real-time driver in Windows and you generate CW, it can be mistimed, which is why some people use WinKeyer, which I've never even touched. So I don't know if that makes a difference.
I think I can answer this one, Mike.
Okay,
if you want.
there you go.
So I think N1MM Plus, this is my guess, is capturing the focus and getting its interrupt, and then it's sending CW, so that you're not getting truncated CW. Does
Okay,
that,
thanks. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right on. Thank you, Buzz.
yeah. I retired as a Microsoft programming partner, so okay. Let's see here. Last word. Anybody want the last word for questions here? Or? That's it. Okay, so let's give Mike a big hand. Everyone, unmute and give him a hand. First, unmute. Unmute everybody. Let's see what happens. Then give him a hand. All right. Thank you, Mike. Wonderful job. Really, home run. That was brilliant.
And now you recorded it, so you can just, long after I'm a silent key, you can still,
Right. We'll have a little tombstone. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
All right.
All
Thank
right.
you
Well,
so
thanks.
much.
Thanks a lot, everybody. It was good seeing a lot of you that I recognize.
Thanks again, Mike. That was very,
Yep.
very interesting. Very
All right.
much. From a
All right.
Geordie to an American.